All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Here, welcome again to our Java user group in Riyadh. Welcome also on behalf of all of you. We welcome our guest, Elias. Hi, Elias.
Hi, hi,
How
Muaf.
are you?
I'm excellent. You?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Uh,
I
yeah.
know I can greeting like as always. Salam alaikum, right?
Oh, yes, yes. Walaikum salam. Thank you so much. Really. Really happy to join us, and everybody here in the Riyadh and Saudi Arabia is welcoming you, in the whole Middle East also. Really happy to have you here as a guest, and we would love to see you really in person in Riyadh, hopefully soon. Yes. So let's firstly have a brief introduction about Elias. Elias is a Java champion. He's actively contributing into the Java world. His specialized niche, he has niches in software quality, where really it's like find really few people talking about quality engineering. You find people talk about design patterns, you find people talk about
Yeah,
microservices architecture, but maybe when it comes to software quality, which is a very very important subject into daily life and daily programming, we find all thanks to Elias for his specialty in this matter. I will also leave it to Elias later on to give also a brief about his biography. But that's a short, really short introduction about Elias. Thank you so much for having you. Before we start, this talk is really special. So it's actually two talks into one talk. that's that's something new. We'll of course enjoy in this talk. Uh, Riyadh Java Youth Group is now is being active group in the whole world, is like welcoming all the speakers around the world, Java champions, software experts, and everyone is welcome to join us. If you have guys really any questions, we would welcome you, encourage you to drop your questions below the box here, and through the sessions, section by section, we'll try to navigate and check your questions. Of course, we would encourage you also to prepare a very tough questions for Elias, of course. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, guys. So I will leave the stage to Elias. Good luck and enjoy.
thank you so much. Thank you all for being here, for seeing my talk. And I like to take my talks like as a normal conversation, like we are sit together in a desk, try to pairing up, or just discussing about something. Of course, I will present some stuff here, but try to think that it's this way. And as soon as you have any questions, drop the questions. We'll see it. We'll reply to your question right away instead of replying this really later on. Okay. Just few things about the talks. All my talks have hands-on code, which is nice. I will be talking about some concepts, some boring slides, let's say, and then I will jump into the code. I will code a little bit. I will show you how it works and prove that it works. And then I will continue showing some slides, some code, some slides, some code until the end. Okay. Then it will be basically two talks. The first one about data, and the second one about distributed architecturing test with three main points. I know this topic is huge, but we will focus on three main points. Okay, I will share my screen as usual, as we do normally, and I will start it with the first one. So this is screen. Yes, and then we need to just put the screen, if we can, Murat, uh, in the spotlight because I have on the backstage. Let me see where, yeah. Awesome, cool, thank you so much. So, just like Murat, I'm still trying to pronounce your name correctly. I will do, but at one point, I'm sorry. Uh, already introduced myself, but like in a nutshell, I'm Elias Nogueira. I'm a senior principal software engineer. I'm from Brazil. Currently, I live in the Netherlands. I know that it's like really far as well. I'm one of the Java champions. I'm one of the Oracle Ace Pro for Java and one of the Java magazine's Netherlands editors. So, and this is kind of fun because the Java magazine that we have in the Netherlands, it's in dual language, it's in English and Dutch, and they send to you the printed format. And I can show you in a bit. So I have one, the latest one here, just to like show you something. We do have a magazine, a real one that we can like flip and can see. And it's also available online in the NL Jug. So maybe later on you guys can find it if you want to take a look. It's 4 magazines per year. Uh, and it's a volunteer activity. It's a free for a lot of people that can get the magazine later. Cool. And I really would ask you to take a look at some point because there are super nice articles there. So if you guys want to follow me to know about quality engineering things, everything about, not everything, but like most of the things about quality using Java, you can follow me all the social networks that I'm available in: X, LinkedIn, GitHub, and Blue Sky. So in this first topic, we'll be talking about data. And every thing we need to do in software engineering, it's basically solving a problem, right? Because normally we have requirements that means develop something. Even if it's a full software, and even if it's a test, it's a problem to solve in terms of requirements or whatever. And the problem we will solve right now is the following one. When we are talking about data for testing and data in general, the first problem is that we don't have a meaningful data. What does it mean? Sometimes we see the data and we see like the first one, address, with a lot of charts that I cannot understand and even pronounce it. It's a problem because later on, for debugging purpose or for understanding the data, I cannot understand it, so I cannot correlate with anything. The second thing is no data requirement focus. Of course, based on the requirements, based on our context, I need the correct data or the incorrect data for testing the edge cases. But normally we want the real data, the focused data. And for example, if I'm creating a voting system, at least like, for example, in Brazil, you can vote when you are 18 years old. And if I want to do a happy path in my test, and it's at least 18 years old, and I have age as 0, it won't work, and it should work. So we need to be mindful about the data requirements. The last one is about generating random fixed data. One of the things we do to try to fix the first one, the meaningful data, is that, okay, I will create a user, John Doe, an email with like kind of real person, but then you can bring me a lot of problems with like the same username everywhere, the same data everywhere, that cannot correlate as well. There are more. I have a talk talking about all those things. That is the link in the slide. You guys can like take a look later. But putting it together, for example, this is a JSON as kind of response body example for an API. If you take just a moment to try to understand the data that is inside this, we can understand the attributes like name, age, address, line, building number, postcode, etc. We can understand all. But then the data inside is hard to understand. It's basically auto-generated by random single choose from Apache Commons. That is nice, but it's not the best solution. And I will show you one of the best solutions to fix that, because if I look at this, I cannot understand anything. How you solve it? With a library, a Java library called Data Faker. Data Faker is a library, a fake data library that runs on the JVM for Java, Kotlin, Groove. And it can create a lot of different stuff, like different names, different addresses, uh, data finance, business data, internet data, and there's are more than 200 different providers that we call it internally in Data Faker. There are providers to generate data. To generate data is super simple. The whole architecture of this project is based on YAML files. There's no mystery on that. So the YAML files has the whole data, and then we create a Java class, and we name it as a provider class that connects the data between the YAML and what we want to consume in our Java code. Why it's in a YAML file and what it is really nice. At least I don't know in Middle East, but in Europe, they are really mindful about GDPR. They are really mindful about the data we use. And having the data in a YAML file that is completely fake, it's good, because there is basically no way that the data is true. And it's good for the test. Even if you try to do a test in production, it would be nice because the data is fake. It's not a real person, not a real address, etc. Data Faker has some concepts. One is base providers. Then we have the repeatable results, the transformation schemas, real life usage, and how you can extend. I will show all. I will show in a way that I will show the code. Sometimes I will write the code. Sometimes I will just show the code, explain this, because it would take a lot of time creating the code from scratch. So base providers. Base providers are basically how you can access the data, where you can access and get the data. For example, it's super simple. By the way, Data Faker, the implementation of it's a Fluent Builder pattern, which is a design pattern in all the on the OO programming language, so the object-oriented programming language, where we can, if you see in the code like in names, everything starts with Faker because it's instance. Then I press dot, I have name, and then after name I have full name. So it's fluent. I can try to even predict what I can maybe have next. And if I use Faker name, full name, I have a name. If I want the address, Faker address, full address, then I have a full address. And so now if I want an IBAN, for example, here in Europe, faker.finance.iban. If I want a credit card number, I can have. If I want an image from the internet to try to upload an image or do anything, I have it. And I have a lot of possibilities. Those are called base providers. And I will code right now, but watch out. When I'm coding at home, just me and my computer, like I'm super strong. When I code in front, like audience or recording it for anyone, is like a kind of this doc. Okay, so I will do a lot of mistakes while I'm like writing the code. Cool. So just to show how it works, I will just create a simple test. It shouldn't be a test, but my precious test. Cool. And what I will do at I told you at test. By the way, guys, sorry, the camera is here, but I will look down because my keyboard and another screen is down, so we'll be looking up and down. Okay. So this is JUnit, so I don't need public example. Cool. And then what are the first thing I need? Faker. I need the instance of Java Faker. I already have it on my POM XML file as a dependency. So if I look at it, that is the data faker here. Whoop. Yeah. highlighted here. And after I have faker, take a look. I will type faker dot. When I press dot, you guys can see that I have a lot of methods, a lot. And of course, the first one I will type name. Then I will press dot, and I will see a lot of different things. Female first name, name, first name, full name, last name, male first name, name with middle name, and everything. I just want the full name for now. Cool. I will add this out of var, and it can be a string because I'm using like string name, but it could be a var. Second thing, I will create an address. So string full address, and my idea already auto-completed for me, but faker dot. I want an address. So address. You can try to think which generator is there. Address dot full address. Let me think about like, I don't know, finance, and I should have, no, finance we saw, right? Let's see something like different from here, like not phone number. Let's first faker dot, let's say internet. In internet, we have domain name, bot user, agent, email address. We have IP address. We have image, HTTP method, MAC address, password, private IP, public IP, port, URL, user agent, username, domain. Let's say I want a username, like classic things, right? So string username, and then I want also a password. String password. It's faker internet password. Perfect. Now what I want to do, I will print this out just for us to see. Of course, it's not intended to be a test, but just to run it in an easy way. I will run it. And as soon as I run, what I will see as a result, name, Caroline Stilber, full address, apartment something in some place. Username, Virgilio Chroma, password and password. Explanations here. The full data faker usage is in English if I don't set any locale. So everything is full English for the United States. I can see that the name and the username doesn't match. And it should be like this because I don't want to really correlate like random names with usernames or with emails. Everything is totally random. And look, try to remember Caroline, apartment, and Virgilio. And I will run it again. In the second run, everything is different, as it should be. Every test execution should have different test data. And this is the beautiful of test data. And then we will learn how to model it. Cool. In a super simple way, I can have like base providers that I can press, like I can type faker dot, and I can see all the base providers and I can start using it. So the next thing here are the repeatable results. I told you that it should be random all the time, right? And should be. But then, let's say you are running a test. You really know the data and the data is correct. But for some reason, the test failed because of the data. And you want to exercise with exact the same data. You try it. What you can do? You can get title of the slide is there is a bug there, but you can create a predictable results, try to seed the faker instance, and then every time you run the same piece of code, you have exact that same result. Cool. So how does it work? Here in the faker class, if we take a look, we have locale, and you have a random, that is the seed. If I add the random, like just like I added in the slide, new random, I will add 1. Of course, it should be random all the time. This fix it. When I run it, the data is fib, and this email like will it. And if I run again, is it still fib? Is still will it? Then, of course, let's say in a nice way to applying your job, every time we run the faker instance, we really create a random here, not fixing, but create like random dot next int, for example, but it's not here because I cannot resolve int. Faker, it's a random. So before that, what I need to do, yeah, I won't do this now, but as it should have a random, I should pass a random class. Okay. This is the other thing to do. The second thing to do with this instance, it's locale. Now I want your guys' help in the comment section to tell me which is the locale for Saudi Arabia. So new locale, and should be something. And I'm sorry, but I don't know what is the exact locale. If you guys can tell me in the comment section, SARAR. Awesome, thank you. So you guys will tell me if it's correct or not, because I don't know if it's correct or not. I will run this with a localization, and it didn't work. So why? Because probably data faker don't have AR as a locale, but it's or AR. Let's try AR. Now, yes. I unfortunately cannot understand what is written, but I think you guys can. And can you guys in the comment section say, okay, it's kind of makes sense. It looks as a name. It looks like a full address on an address. It looks like a username. Yeah, very good, cool. So you guys can see that with this library, you can have localization, and you can have like any kind of different language localized, so everyone can understand or generate data for what you want to use for your own context, which is really nice. I really don't know if like the numbers make sense together here, but yeah, I think the name, address, and username, as you guys told me, it works. It's super nice. You guys can localize it as well. You guys can mix. Yes, you guys can mix. Normally, I don't show it, but as you guys ask it, let me do one thing. Of course, you guys will take a look in the data faker site at some point, right? In the quick start, not a quick start, here. That is the different locales, and here you guys can see the multi-locales. And in order to have multi-locales, and actually the example is one is for Netherlands and others from AR, like from Saudi Arabia. That's nice. So you guys can generate like the mixed approach in this way. You guys have two fakers, one per locale, and you guys need to randomize the faker with the next elements by the number of data you want in general for the locales. Cool. Continue here. We have the second thing, like data faker basically is this. If I come back here, if I need something extra, one thing that is really nice that I know who did. So tire, I have faker.tire. And if I take a look in tire, I know the guy who created this because it's from Netherlands. He wanted for a project he is a consultant. And actually he created this for the company and actually it put back to the data faker. We can see like aspect radio, code, construction. I don't know that like vehicle type. I don't know that like some tire can have a lot of different things like to select. But even for like things that we think that doesn't have there, we do have there. And you guys can play around like faker, press dot, and can try to see everything. This is the data faker in a nutshell. Simple like that. But there are of course, there are more features, but I will show after these basic ones, the advanced ones. where the first one is transformation schemas. Uh, Fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know, depending on context, sometimes we need to work with legacy systems, or we need to actually create files to upload, to load with some data, or to create something like this. It's common approach at some companies, and most of the companies, I would say. And the transformation schemas will give you the ability of automatically generate data for some file formats like CSV, JSON, SQL, YAML, XML, and even Java. Don't ask me why Java. We just created because we can, but no one will use this for Java. All the people that I talk to, they use for CSV, JSON, SQL most of the time. How it works in a nutshell. If I want to generate the output of a file with random data, with data faker, I need first create a schema. A schema, it's basically a map that has two strings as the key and the value. The key will be kind of the attribute or the column or whatever for that data file. And the data will be the data from data faker. So you can see that we're using the supplier here saying, hey, I have a schema of fields with a name, and this name is faker name with middle name. I have another field with username that will be faker internet username, and so on. This is the first starting point. The second part is using the transformation schema itself, and I have two here in the screen, the CSV and the SQL, but I want to show this in the code directly and show how it works. So you guys will access this easily. That is my GitHub repo, all this code. But in schema, so I have this CSV schema, but before I have CSV schema, I have something here that this is based on. Cool. You guys can see that I have basically the same thing as the slide. I have a schema with fields, name, username, email, and password, auto-generating with data faker. And then for CSV, what I need to do, I need to, of course, use this CSV transformer, and I will build this class, and I say, hey, this is a CSV file, and I want to have a header, so header true. I want my CSV file, sorry, to have a separator as a comma, which is classic for CSV file, and build this class for me. And then what I will say, hey, I call it this CSV transformer, generate, based on my schema, and my schema has, remember, name, username, email, and password. Generate 5 different data there. What I'm doing, I'm logging this, I'm doing some assertion, and I'm writing a file. The ability of writing a file for that, it's from you. It's not from data faker, because data faker generates the data. It doesn't generate any file, so you need to generate the file, okay? But if we run this class, I will show the output in the logger and the file, which will be auto-generated CSV. So I will run this, and we'll see here in the output, I cannot see that clearly because it's like there's a lot of things, but you can see there's a CSV file more or less, right? That has name as a column, as the first line as a column, name, username, email, and password, and the data by comma. But if I look at, and I think I added in my target folder, no, but I added it, it's just right down, let me refresh my project, reload, cool. And where I created it, again, auto-generated. Here, resource, auto-generated. So if I take a look, it's a CSV file. It has comma, a column, and all the data separated by a comma. If I run this again and try to remember this, Conchita is the first data for the name. I run it again. and the file has changed with the data. So basically, I can generate even files with that. This is an example of CSV. Another example could be a SQL script. If you want, for example, it's really common in Spring Boot. If you want to start your application for testing or for some reason, and you need to load with data, instead of hitting the endpoints and ingest data by like a put endpoint or a post endpoint, you can just load it up during the initialization of Spring with a SQL script, and it will uh, uh, insert all this data. So what we can do, the same stuff, instead of CSV SQL. So I say, hey, SQL transformer, I want to build this as a batch of 5. The table name will be users. The dialect for the script will be Postgres, and build this for me. Call it SQL transformer, and then I have the output. And for SQL transformers, I want to generate based on the schema also 5. Cool. And then if I run this, again, we will see here the output more or less as a SQL script. And if I take a look at the file, I will also see as a SQL file, ready to be used in any database. And if I run it again, and let's lock in the Delbert and Claude, I will run again. The data will be different. Now it's Laverne and Jonah. And it's beautiful because I can like mix different approaches. I can use data in my code for tests, or I can even use a data faker to generate data in files in XML, CSV, YAML, SQL, and Java. Cool. I can start mixing the approaches. This is fine. This is really nice. If you guys have some questions in between, throw into the comments. I will be super happy to answer it. Now I want to talk about like more or less the real life usage. I'm showing you like code snippets, like playing around with it, but how you can use this in a more like in a serious way, like in a business way, in a project way. I call this approach Test Data Factory. There are a lot of different articles in the internet. One of the articles is from myself. Another articles are from different people. Martin Fowler has an article about it as well. Some people call this object model, but I like to call it Test Data Factory. It's an approach of generating data. And for me, Test Data Factory, it's the combination of 3 aspects. The first one is a model object in Java to model all the data you should hold and use later. The factory pattern to generate different data scenarios. And then later on, if you want, you can mix factory with builder if you want to. And then a tool to randomize in a meaningful way the data that you need to use in the factory that you will load up in the model. How we can combine those 3? I will show in the slides first, and then I will show in the code. First thing, I'm creating already the factory class. So I have my class as user data factory. I have the instance of faker, and I calling my method as a valid user. Then what I'm doing, hey user, I'm using the builder pattern for the user. I have a name, username, email, and password, and I'm adding the data for this class, which call it user, for name using faker.name.middlename, username, email, and password, and so on, as the same way as we are seeing. But what is the difference about using this? We can actually create in the same class this valid user. If I want to test an edge case, creating an invalid user where the password does not match, I can create a new method, password not matching with the minimal requirements, and then setting the password not matching the minimal requirements. And then I don't need to actually manually change the data, hard coding the data. I'm just creating random data based on my requirements. And this is beautiful to do. How we can do this live? So I also have the test here. So what I have here, both of the case. I'm saying here that the password, based on my random requirement, it should be between 8 and 16 charts. And a password that, of course, is not does not meet the minimum requirements. Password should not 8, should be 11, let's say. Actually, it's 8 what I created. Let me see. Whatever. Let me say it should be 11 to 16. Sorry. This is my my rule for the password. If I have less than 11, it's an edge case that I need to test as well, right? How I can create it? You can see that I have a user data factory. And in the same thing, I have the user data factory as a final class. I have my valid user. What I'm creating, all the data that I think that is valid, even the password, and the password here just to match 11 to 16. This should be valid user. And if I want to create the invalid password, I can say, hey, password, generate between 1 and 11. But 11 it's in, so actually it should be 1 to 10 because 11 is fine. So you can see that I'm adjusting my data requirements by encoding intentionally just to show you, hey, I need to make sure that I know the requirements. It's 11 to 16, but now it should be less than 11. So it should be 1 to 10, for example. If I want to create any other thing, like email is not valid, super easy to do. How I could do? Public static user. By the way, my user class is just a normal model class with name, email, username, password, with my constructor, with my getters and setters. You could use Lombok. I'm not using Lombok anymore, so it's easier. Like you can create a class or you can create a record for that. So user, how we can call it? Not valid email, right? Told you. So just for the sake, I will just copy and paste this thing and I will just rename instead of writing down. So invalid email. This should be valid email. Nice. And then what I should do in the email should be something invalid. I can even fix it, right? Or I can maybe, I know that is one of the invalid emails, use faker.internet.username because I won't have the at and something, right? Then will be invalid email. And I can create a not valid email as well. When I run those things, I know that the data will be based on that requirement. And I'll just create a test, a fake one, at test, void invalid email, and data factory, what's happening in my invalid email, not valid email, sorry, not valid email, and does not contain, like AI is doing, is taking my job and already like predicting what I'm doing. Perfect, it's nice, no problem, AI. And I will run this, the entire class, and you see the results together. So for the valid user, I have here Rusty, but let's focus on the password. The password has 1, 2, let me increase a little bit. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 chars. It's valid. Perfect. So for the password not matching the minimum requirements, the password has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect. It's less than 11. And then the email, not valid. Email here, it's marlin.fay without at and .com or .anything later. Cool. If I run it again, the data will be different, but it's still matching my requirements. So the valid user uh, for the email, for the password, still has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Cool. The not valid is now with 3 on email. And the email not valid, it has still the same way without at and dot with the any like .com, .aa, EU, whatever. Cool. I have questions here in the chat that I can see. So one is how to add complexity with a password. Like the first letter should be a capital. And, oh, that's awesome question. And I instead of showing here in the code, I will show here in data faker because that is one thing about password here. Let me remember where is it now. I think it's the basic usage. No, it's not basic usage. I need to add this in my slides at some point. Expressions. No. Jesus. So data formats, advanced password generation. Yeah, here. So there is a way to create passwords with this, exactly what you said. I want the first letter to be capital. I want to make sure there is at least one special char and at least one number. So we can have this example here that the faker can, hey, the length is 8. That should be at least 2 uppercase and at least 3 digits. Like, so 3, 4, 5 of them will be uppercase and digits, the other one will be random. Or we can actually like do other things with special chars here as well. So we have the list of special chars that are like lowercase and some that is allow it, and then we can mix it up. So it's not fluent in this way, but there is a way to do that. There is another question here is how to test if there's HAGASP, if you have an HAGASP, regular expression syntax there, right? This is actually painful. You have something about, you can, if you can write down a little bit what I will ask you, the answer is that you have the regular expression. You want to test if the regular expression is correct, or if you want to make sure if the data that will serve that regular expression is correct. I need to know this first before I think I can answer, okay? Just seeing another question here. It's how to manage this generated data for reuse, like comparing with previous records. Abdullah, you need to do that repeatable results. For example, you need, like we did before, but it needs to log it. That's why I'm logging everything here. In that other class that I created, my precious, remember? My precious, cool. Locale, let me, new random. You need to play with the seed, and we need to log the seed actually, right? So for example, var random, yes. So for example, I would just like output random here, random, my random, my random, like this, and I will output it, and then I will use my hand here, and then yes, you can control in all the executions, and of course you need to log it. Cool. But I'm just like printing out not the random, but like two string we won't work as well, right? Let me just take a look. Of course, it won't work. No suitable this I did to string. This dot. I don't know how it is the not to string. It doesn't work. Next int. Yeah. So, so cool. I have the number here that it was used. And then if you log it in a log file, then you can see the previous execution, see, okay, the previous execution uses this data as a name, and I know that is exactly this code. Okay. Then you can have this predictability, let's say, in this way. Back to that regular expression, yes, both case. Unfortunately, no. There is no exact way to test the regular expressions directly using Data Faker. Data Faker actually has some kind of everything appending with phi. I will show you here. That's called expressions. So you can use expressions, kind of regular expression, but it's not like testing it. That you can like numberify. You can use numberify. You can say it's 4 digits, or it's something like digit, test, and digit. It's used regular expression, but it's not testing or trying to test in regular expression. So unfortunately, Data Faker doesn't do it. Cool. And I will show how to create yours, and then I will jump to the next one. This is simple. I won't rush on this, of course, but I will show the slides and I will show the code already created for that. For example, this is something we always do when we are starting using Data Faker. Sometimes in your company, you have sensitive data that shouldn't be in the open source library. But then you want to use the same syntax of Data Faker to have that data. So I will show you how to do it properly. Not properly, but how to do it in Data Faker way. So you can see using Data Faker with the open source part, with all the data and your private data as well. So how we can do it? There are 3 easy steps. First one, we need to create a YAML file because remember, it's based on YAML files. Second one, you create a provider class because remember, in order to get the data from the YAML, we create a Java class, which is called a provider. And then we create a custom Faker object to just differentiate which data comes from the open source, which data comes from the custom. But of course, in the custom, we will extend the open source so we can have both data. First thing, what I will try to create here, I will try to create a Faker to generate Java conference names. And then there is a pattern. First one, I need to create a YAML file in the source main resource. Then my YAML file should start with the locale that I want to use. The default is English. I'm using English just to simplify that. Then the second line should be Faker because it's the Faker instance. And then in the third line, you have the name of what you want to generate. In my case, Java conferences. Then you have everything that you want to use from Java Conference. I'm just generating different names. And I have it hard-coded all the names that I want it for now, like Devox UK, DevNexus, Devox Belgium, a lot of different conferences. Cool? This is the first step. Second step, I need to create this provider class. This provider class extends the Data Faker abstract provider class. And then I need to override, I need to create a protected constructor using the base providers, doing a super on it, and then doing what the connection it is. I need to tell this class, hey, the default locale is English, and look for the YAML file in my resource folder. In my resource folder, the file name is Java Conference YAML. The same as we have here created. Cool. The second step of this provider class is that I connect the data from there. So in the YAML file, guys can see after Java Conference, there is names, and then there are the names that will be generated. And here you can see the method that's public string names. And then what I would do, resolve Java conference.names. If you guys can try to associate, you guys can see here Java conference after its names. So it's actually you go Java conference names and get a random one from that list. Then the last step is to create a custom faker. So I create a name, my custom faker, can be your company name, can be whatever. So it should extend faker to access all the other generators that is already there. And what you need to do, any faker generation that is not registered, of course, in the open source, you need to register it for yourself. So that's why we create the custom faker, and then we have public Java conference, Java conferences, and we get the provider, which is the class Java conferences. We will instantiate it, and we will return itself. Then we can just use it in a super nice way, super easy way, actually. So you guys can see here that we have a task that my custom faker, I get the Java conference.name, and I'm getting like as a Java event name. And then I'm just creating a country name, and I'm logging those information. But how you would like in the code? I want to run the code. I have exactly the same thing I have on my slides. But when we see, let me just mimic the same thing. Like you guys can see that I have my custom faker here, right? And this my custom faker, it's extending faker. And it's really important because then I can like add this one in the whole faker object. And then when I use my custom faker dot, I will have access to all the other ones, including name, including address, include everything. But I will have access to the Java conference, the one I created. And then from Java conferences, I have name. I have only name because the only one I created. And then we can generate the data for that. Remembering that I have a resource folder in my main with the Java conference YAML with this conferences names. Okay. Then when I run it, it will get a random one. So now we got Devox UK. If I run it again, it's now DevNexus. If I run it again, it's called JPrime. If I run it again, we get a different one because it's random. So Devox UK, but like because it's a short list. Let's see now, then Devox Belgium, and so on. So you can create your own as well using this approach in a super simple way. Cool. This is the first part of the talk. You guys don't need to scan me or do anything. Like you guys will have it, everything later. Before I start the next one, I will give like some minutes if you guys want to write some questions and I can answer about this part, and then I will jump into the next part. I will just prepare for the next part, but you guys can write down your questions. And I close it, of course. I shouldn't close it. Here, file, yeah, this one. Cool. So I see no questions for now. If you guys want to ask it later when we are done with the second one, feel free. Okay. This second one, it's another talk that I gave. I gave this talk the first time this year in the United States, in Boston, for the InfoQ. And what I'm trying to do here is like showing how to test complex distributed system in an easy way. By the way, testing any kind of system, for the simplest one to the most complex one, it's actually easy. The hardest part of testing, it's because we need more code. And sometimes the logic behind the scenes for testing sometimes is equally harder as the logic you created for the code, because you need to test it. So you start thinking all the possible ways it can get be wrong. You have a lot of tests. Let's get just one simple example that's not, maybe it's not, or I don't know what industry you guys work on, but for example, aviation. Aviation, we basically cannot make one mistake in software, right? In or healthcare or like super critical systems. Imagine how is the size of the code to do one thing in aviation. Maybe it's, I don't know, 100 lines of code to test it. I would say it's at least 10 times more code, because it needs to test a lot of different possibilities just to make sure nothing's gonna be wrong on that. So testing for any kind of thing is kind of easy, because we are exercising, learning, creating tests, but we sometimes create even more code than we create for the what we want to do in the code itself. But I will show super easy examples here that you can apply everywhere. This is me again. I don't need to tell again about myself. How this one is organized. First, we have a problem, of course. Then we learn how to solve the problem. There will be a code example, and there will be takeaways. And just to give an overview of the complex distributed system, I was working in a company, in a fintech company. I now work in a travel company, Booking.com. Before that, I was working Backbase. But in that company, that fintech company, we had a full banking platform, and with different things. The banking itself, like digital banking, we had lending, we have assist, we have engage, we have onboarding, and based on that huge different like verticals, let's say, or business units, everything is made through APIs, and all the stuff are based on common services, enterprise integrations, and unified security for everything, because it's banking. Banking like takes care about all the different stuff. And we had we had even like different core bank systems, fintech patterns, and even open bank to support. So it's a complex system, right? This is just a full overview, the big picture. And then, for example, if I just go deeper to see only digital banking that I was working, I can see a lot of different groups for features and APIs: payments, batches, limits, dashboard, cards, loans, approvals, accounts, transactions. That's a normal things we see in the internet banking, for example. And if I go down in one of those boxes, I can go to payments. See, payments is the first one. I have a lot of other ones. But if we see payments, and actually it simplified the payments system here, that what I was working before. But for example, a base or a basic payment system has something called a payment or payment order that we can make the payments. I had the payment options. With different options, you can make the payments, or different types. SEPA, US, maybe Middle East, you guys have a different payment type system. All those things should be configured by a different service. Batches are part of payments as well. So I have batches in the platform. And for everything, I have the integrations between the core system, integrations with different any other service, for example, bank calendar that you can see in the left side. Bank calendar is, for example, if I want to make a payment, and if I cannot make a payment that day because it's a holiday, because I don't know, it's during the weekend, I should have a way. And it's not in payments, it's another service even. And for that, I have even external parts like anti-fraud in the right part, which is a third-party provider. Everything that goes through payments, I want to send to a provider, say, hey, check if it looks fraudulent or not, if it checks legit. If if it looks like suspicious, block it and inform me about this. And I have a lot of things here. You can see that it's like kind of a lot of boxes, but this is like nothing. It's not even like 10% that we have in a real payment system. But you guys can see that it's kind of complex. And then there's a lot of challenge to test these kind of things. I wrote here at least 5. One, test with the real dependencies that we will have. Support of multiple database. If you guys have, you guys are distributing a service to someone, like I'm working for now at Booking.com, we have our own database. It's only one. It's perfect. Not one, it's actually more, but like, let's say it's only one. But if you are distributing software to be used by a lot of different people, distribute the software itself, you might support multiple database. You need to take care about how you can mock dependencies, how to test asynchronous requests, because a lot of things will be done asynchronously, right? Maybe between the services itself will be like synchronous, but at some point it will be asynchronous. You send some message, some topic to Kafka, and some consumer will consume it later. And you need to have a governance in terms of API for multiple things. And there is even more. But I will work now in only 3, which are support of multiple databases, mock dependencies, and test asynchronous requests. And I will show some slides, the problem, how we can do it, code, and then next part. Cool? So the coding example, I have a simple Spring Boot application. It's a backend application which mimics a payment system. It's a super easy way. If for educational purpose only, guys, don't go that hard on that. And for this payment, I have 2 things. I can make the payments. I have a third party that is looking at the payments before it's done to see if it's valid, is it fraudulent or not. And everything that I will do through the payment system, I will log in the audit database, which is external, because of course, every payment that I can like send a request and pay that, I want its record somewhere, right? Because if there's any problem, I know what happened. It's really common. And normally those kind of audits, everything that I send to this database or these systems are asynchronous. So I will have an event listener there, like listening for all the asynchronous messages that I will have there. In a nutshell, this is super basic architecture for a lot of APIs, right? So talking about databases, what we do as a Java developers is super common. We use one application in one database. And if we want to support multiple databases, then we have a problem for testing, but it's easily solvable. Modern systems, normally they should support multiple databases, right? What is the problem in testing? Integration tests normally runs into in-memory database, H2, which is classic for Spring. And if we do that, we will be missing database-specific issues there with some dialects and some database internals. Testing sequentially different database will be a problem as well. We can, like, let's say we support multiple databases, but we want to test. Then the time that CI pipeline will run will be the same time as one full integration test plus the number of database you need to support. If it runs in 3 minutes and have 3 databases, it will be 9 minutes. So it's exponentially because you're running sequentially. What are super common problems? So usage of in-memory database doesn't show real problems, and there is a high effort for real database to apply. And sometimes we, in terms of testing, as we don't want to spend that much time, sometimes or we don't have that much time, we do manual steps, but it's not that ideal. Just showing this part first. let's go through code. Let me put here. Let me open the second part of code. Cool, this one. And let me show one thing. Classic uh, test. I will show one integration test, but it needs to be in this branch. Cool. I have a super simple test here. It's an integration test. Just to explain to you, I have a test like should find a payment ID and return like, okay, HTTP 200. I'm creating like a transaction ID, an amount, and status pending. Then I want to save this payment in my repository, and then I'm using the mocking MVC. Every time I get API payments with that payment ID, where the payment ID is that one I created, then it status okay, transaction is that transaction, the amount is that I told here, and the status is pending, that's the same I created here. Super simple test using mocks. And this, I will remove this for now. If I run this, it will run successfully, of course. I expect that. Yeah, all the test runs. But if I take a look at the logs here, you guys can see this thing. JDBC H2 in memory. Why is that? Because my test will run in the same Spring Boot profile, the default one I have, and my default Spring Boot profile has an in-memory database. It's super common for us, right, doing this. But sometimes it's not the best thing. What is one of the best things we should do first? Do it with a real database. Then, to do with a real database, I need to create an application YAML for my tests. I need to know what is my main database I want to test. And of course, I want to use test containers for that. I'm sorry, I won't deep dive in test containers. My precondition here is that you guys already know about test containers, how to use it for Java. If you guys don't know, try to understand here, it's fine. But I strongly recommend you guys take a look at in test containers later, okay? So here I'm saying, hey, I want to use through test containers MySQL in this version, and this is my payment database. And this my application YAML is that application dash test. So now I will say here, hey, my active profile is test. Every time I call this active profile, it goes to my resource folder, see if I have an application dash test. It has. And then my URL for my data source, it's from test containers MySQL. Nice. So when I run this, you see it will take a little bit more time because of test containers, not be that fast, but now it got the test containers, and it should run in a second. Yeah, it runs. And if I look at the logs for H2, I just have the console because the application started with H2. But if I look at the test, I have MySQL starting up. So I know that now I have a real database testing. If there would be something problematic, I would see in a kind of real database. How we can do it in a super nice way, supporting multiple ones? We do in a parallel way, supporting different ones, not only one. In the case I showed you is MySQL. So, for example, I want to at least, let's say, support it for MySQL, MS Microsoft SQL, and Oracle. But I would exclude Oracle for my examples. What I should do, and let me just change here, but I will just show the code basically how this should be structured. I won't code anything with you formally. You guys saw that I need one application profile for MySQL, for example. So application dash had test, but we can create application dash MySQL. So what I have my resource folders, one application YAML, which is the default one using H2. I have the H2. I don't know why I have this, but don't ask me why. I have an application MS SQL, Microsoft SQL, using test containers for SQL. And I have another for MySQL using here test containers MySQL. All the things in application YAML can be different, but it's basically for me it's the same, but I would just want to focus on the different databases, okay? So I have one application profile per different database. And now I have for MySQL and MS SQL. This is the first step. Second step, you guys remember that I do this through the active profile in Spring and setting the active profile. But then what I will do, in my Pong XML file, of course, I need to have all the necessary dependencies for test container and for the database. So if I show you here, I have test containers MySQL, test containers MS SQL, the MySQL connector, MS SQL connector, and I must have, there's a lot of different ways, but the easiest one, I must have profiles in my Pong XML. So I have the default profile, which we use H2. I have another profile called MySQL, which we use the Spring profile, MySQL. And I have another profile called MS SQL with property Spring profile, MS SQL. With this property Spring profile, Spring will know that it needs to find an application.mysql.yaml. But I don't need to write the full path. I just need to write what is after application dash. So Spring will figure out. Cool. This is the second thing. And remember, we have profiles. The last thing to do in my test class, test payments integration, my active profile will be the Spring profiles active. Whatever the profile that is active in that moment will run. If I run right now, let's take a look together. I will see that it's H2. You see that like in memory, it will be always like that. If I want to change locally to MS SQL, how I should do? I need to run to the command line, and I will do mvn clean test, and I will do like this. Hey, I will just focus on my payment integration test, just run this test, and I will use the profile MySQL. As soon as I run this, it will run the test, and if I search, it's using, you can see like creating container for image MySQL. It's using MySQL to run this test. As the same thing if I do the same, but now I want MS SQL. It will take a little bit more time to run because of MS You can see there was something like try to connect, because it takes a little bit more to start up the container. And then you see MS SQL. And I see that container MS SQL started. But if I try to find MySQL, I don't find anything. So you can see that I focus on the container. So we basically, through the code, we solved the problem of supporting multiple databases for testing. But now we have another problem, how we can run this for multiple ones. Because I can run sequentially, right? I can run MySQL, MS SQL, and all the others that I support. But if each integration test takes 3 minutes, per database it will be more 3 minutes. If I have 3 databases, 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 9, more or less 9 minutes. And what should be the best way? And of course, it won't be locally. It would be through a pipeline, running it in parallel. So as soon as I have to run my integration test supporting multiple databases, I want to run them in different threads, let's say, and sequentially, all of the same time. We actually know that this exact the same time doesn't exist. So we have like super milliseconds in difference or seconds in difference, but it's basically in parallel at the same time. How we can do this? In my code, for these examples, I'm using GitHub. And for GitHub, I'm using GitHub Actions. And for this, I have this one called build and test. So the main thing, I will ignore most of the things that are here in the jobs. But during my integration test, and focus on that, guys, I have integration test stage that needs my build, that we run in Ubuntu. Cool. If you continue, if there's any error, because I want to continue the test, because if the test fails, I want to see everything. And then there is a feature. Every different CI/CD application has this kind of feature that you can use in GitHub. It's called matrix. So my strategy to run this is through a matrix, and the matrix has a profile, and this profile will be MySQL and MS SQL. Remember that I have the profile with the exact names in my Pong XML, right? And then when I need to run this, you guys can see that my commands to run it, it's Maven test. I'm focusing on that specific test because I have only one test here. And then I said, hey, -p, my profile, get the name from the matrix. And as I told my job, that is the strategy is to run based on a matrix, based on this profile, which is MySQL and MySQL, it will run parallel for these ones. Elias, I don't trust you, or I cannot see it. We will see it here. This is the GitHub page for the project we are seeing right now. I'm assessing now the GitHub actions of it, and I will actually run the workflow. Wait a minute. Oh, no. Build and test. Cool. I will run the workflow. I'm running here manually just to show you, okay? But as soon as it started, I can see build and test. You guys can see now build, and it will take like 40 seconds more or less. So I want to keep you in the 40 seconds, you come back. As soon as the parallel execution starts, you see something like this. Matrix, integration test, 2 jobs. If I click on those jobs, I can see that integration test, MySQL and MySQL started. And they will start if I go back there now and take a look. Yeah, they started. And see the time? They started more or less together. So they are running parallel, both integration tests for different databases. And this can speed up. Now it runs, I think, in a minute, almost 2. Both this stage will run in only 2 minutes instead of 4 minutes. Do you guys have any questions for this part? I will tell you the takeaways, and I will wait for some questions if you guys have. And I know that I have a question that I need to answer later for Data Faker. Takeaways for this part. Integration tests must validate behavior across multiple databases if you guys support multiple databases, of course. Parallel execution will speed up and reduce the CI bottleneck. And believe me, in my previous company, we had the parallel approach to run the test for payments. And in parallel, the total time was 40 minutes to wait for integration tests to run because we had a lot of tests. We were running sequentially that before it was 2 hours. So imagine that. And of course, bringing the containerization approach will show more consistency and fidelity in your tests. And there is no way we cannot think about it without using test containers. Cool? So the second part, easy one as well. Third-party systems. And third-party systems are fragile part of our code. So remember that in my full architecture, I had the payments, we have the payment system, and we have an anti-fraud detection system, right? Which is a third party. It's a company that provides this service for me. And normally we do in-code mocks to try to solve this problem, but it solves a problem for one thing only. And sometimes these external dependencies, like the third parties, they providing a sandbox or QA environments for us to try to test it. But sometimes it's flaky, sometimes the data change it there, and all my tests will fail, not because I did something wrong, because this other sandbox or QA environment for a third party, it's not behaving correctly or it's out. So, can we trust third-party systems in our test? It's a question, but for me, it's a no. We cannot trust. Tests that rely on third-party systems like QA sandbox environments will be flaky and slow. And local mocks can be or might be inconsistent and limited for a single team. And I give you a context on this and I show in the code what is basically the context, okay? So before I jump in, I will show another test. Source test. Payments, actually, because no, it's fraud. So normally when we need to mock, one of the most classic frameworks we use in Java is Mockito. We can use mock MVC, of course, because it's normal for Spring in this context because I'm using Spring, but now I'm using Mockito. So I'm extending with my Mockito class, and I'm mocking the REST template. I'm mocking the fraud check configuration, which is a configuration that I get the URL for that external service, the API key, and the timeout. I'm injecting a mock. That is my fraud check service. My fraud check service is really simple. I won't deep dive on this, but I will just tell you in a nutshell. That is check fraud for a payment that it will send a request to the URL for that, to endpoint, and checking the check with the amount and the transaction ID. That will be two informations that my fraud system will get, the amount and transaction ID. And based on that, I will use REST template. I use a get method to send it and getting the response. And I will actually verify the response itself. Cool. So if the body is null, okay, there's nothing. Otherwise, return it's fraudulent, because if the body is empty, there is no fraud. If there's something, I know this fraudulent, that is the problem there. Cool, super simple, it's not professional, just to show the example. Then I have the test. Hey, for the fraud check, I want is fraudulent false. I expect that should be not fraudulent, and I know that the message is not fraud detected. So when I using my REST template to send a GET with any kind of information, it should return HTTP 200, and I should say, hey, is fraudulent is false. But I have another one that is a fraud detected. But I'm basically doing the same thing. Of course, I could control the different any string or different body, different parameters, but I'm just doing a super easy test. If I run this, of course it works because I'm modeling, because I don't want to deal with the third party. What is the problem here when you work in a distributed system? Not only our team, maybe we use that fraud check, right? Any other team or API service or any project that wants to check that, they also needs to create this mock. And then you will end up with 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 teams rewriting or writing the same mocks. And if something changes, 20 teams needs to change the same thing. And this is painful. How we can solve that? With an approach called service virtualization. And for that, we are going to use Wiremock and Docker. So this is the explanation of service virtualization, but instead of reading this, I will just show this image and explain to you. Remember that the problem is that we need to use mocks in different teams. So instead of writing down a mock for my team into the code, I will write this mock down in another place. And this another place can be anything, but this concept of detaching the mocks from the code on my teams and putting something else and somewhere else, it's called service virtualization. But as it's called service virtualization, it should be a service running somewhere that I can access. And then, of course, it will mimic an API endpoint. And to be able to have access to it for everyone, one of the modern approach for that, it's applying this to a container. So if I have a container, I can run locally on my local test on my machine. I can deploy in a Docker infrastructure, in a Kubernetes infrastructure, or whatever infrastructure that can support a Docker container. How we will do it? We will replace the mocks we have with Mockito with Wiremock. And then we will tell Wiremock, act as an API with a real endpoint and reply based on what I'm going to say to you. If I do this, I will pack into a Docker container, and I can distribute this Docker container across any team. And then everyone will be the same consistent way to consume the mocks. If I want to change something because my third party changed it, then I can change it in the code that I provide to that container and just share the container. And I did one single change and 20 teams can do it and can use that. So I can create more reliable and repeatable integration tests without hitting any QA and sandbox systems. Cool. How I can do this? I want to do the basics of Wiremock as well. If you guys don't know Wiremock, it's super easy to do actually. Please take a look at it later, but I will explain a little bit. There are two ways to use Wiremock for that. One is through code, another is through JSON files. I'm a fan of JSON files because it's super easy for everyone to modify. Remember that for fraud, we have two scenarios basically, right? I don't have any fraud, or I do have a fraud. And I actually can dictate, because it needs to dictate in my mock, how a fraudulent payment will looks like and how a normal payment will look like. So I needs to model this somehow. And one of the ways we model this is through data. And what do we do? Remember that I told you that Wiremock is can be based on code, on JSON files. I use the JSON files approach. So per request that I want, or per that kind of fraudulent, not fraudulent, I will create, there is a name on Wiremox, call it mappings. You can see on the screen now. So for success, I'm saying, hey, I have this JSON that as soon as I have a request, there's the method is get, and the path it's whatever I have, then API fraud check. And if I have query parameters where the amount can be anything and transaction ID can be anything, and the header for the API key is the secret fraud key, then reply for me HTTP OK 200 and reply based on the content of this JSON file. And this JSON file will return fraudulent, false message, transaction approved after successful fraud check. You see that I'm mapping saying Wiremock, hey, as soon as I have a GET request for this endpoint where amount is anything, transaction ID is anything, and the header is this key, reply saying everything's okay. But now, if I want to do the failure thing, remember that I told you the data is the main focus. So I have the same thing here now. Hey, if a request is coming through a GET method to API front check, and the amount is equal to 4 times 9 dot 2 times 9, and transaction ID is whatever, and the header is that the header secret front key, but the difference now is I have this amount. If I have this amount, replying to me that is okay, but the body will be this JSON file, and this JSON file will say, hey, it's fraudulent. And the message is transaction flagged as suspicious due to the unusual spending patterns, because it's a higher spending pattern. So notice here that every time that I need to have a fraudulent check, that I want to mimic a fraudulent check, I want to use this amount. Then we have everything we want. How I can use Wiremock with that? I have a Docker Compose file for Wiremock. So it's a Wiremock. The image is this one from Wiremock. I'm calling it mock front check. It will serve in the port 8087, and I'm just mapping the files, copying to the Docker container, and it will reply to me. Now, look at this. I don't have any Docker container running, right? And I will show the test. This is the mock, this is integration. So to run the integration normally, if I tell you, okay, one of the normal things to do is to hit up a sandbox environment or a QA environment from my partner, right? And that's exactly what I have here. I have like my sandbox QA for my vendor in this port API fraud. And I have the test here. A should return not fraudulent and should return fraudulent. And you can see what I'm highlighting right now, not fraudulent. It's a amount here, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. And for fraudulent, it's exactly what I have in that my mapping for Wiremock, 4 times 9 dot 2 times 9. If I run this right now, but I want to hit the sandbox of this company, and I will run, it failed. And if I take a look in the issue, here, on no exceptions, sandbox QA vendor, it could not connect to that because it thinks that it's out. And this is a real issue that can happen. You're relying on a third-party environment, it's out. How we can solve this? It's super easy. I have already the code with everything. I will run that container, run, and you see Docker initiating here. Cool. And I have the wiremock, and wiremock already started. Cool. Now what I will do, that same test, I know that I'm running this HTTP localhost. And this is basically the same stuff. And I will run it. It failed, but I did it intentionally just for us to see it together. Let's see what happened in the log. And I scroll down, see, hey, response is null. I could not unsupported recognize SSL message, SSL could not do anything. Cool. And I will see my Docker container right now. And my Docker container is saying something for my wiremock. Hey, my wiremock say, hey, API front check, transaction ID, accept 200 alive. Here, sorry. A little bit more here. It says, hey, close it, stub, and request. Let me, yeah. I forgot, missed that. Let's go again. Here. So close the stub path API fraud check, but I'm expecting check. I just need to add the correct path, actually, what that I created for my environment. So you can see request is /check, but the closest path is API fraud check. API fraud check is that one I added here, right? But my container for wiremock is API fraud check as well. What I did it wrong. API fraud. Let me, if I do this, let's do it together. Same thing. Let's see the closest step. Same thing. The URLs are not matching. Path API fraud check, and I have only check. Ah, you got it. I'm trying to just mimic saying, hey, I cannot try, but it looks the same, but it's not matching the protocol. Let's run. Successful. But now look like how different it is. It's running, right? And I'm hitting a container. Wiremock is replying everything for me. And it's mapping, actually. If I have exact data, it's connecting. If it's fraudulent, it's because I have 4 times 9 dot 2 times 9. If it's not fraudulent, it's anything that is not that amount. I could even, like, if I take a look again in wiremock, yeah, with the, I can even get this one, which is a get, right? I can open my browser, HTTP, localhost. What was the port that I had there? 887. Oops, 87. API flow, and that now is correct. But you can see, like, if I don't like that focus on that like matching, I can see that there's someone replying to me, which is Wiremock. And then it's nice because I have someone replying to me, and I can now control how Wiremock will reply to me. This should actually work. I really don't know what is not working right now, because it's cannot get the the key, because it needs to add a header. That's why I cannot do directly to the browser. See the difference now? Everything is fine. But say, hey, API key is not present. That's why I cannot do directly with here. If it would be with Postman, it will be fine. Cool. Takeaways before you guys can ask any questions. So predictable mocks like with Wiremock are more reliable and isolated for testing. Dockerizing it, like creating a container, it will allow us to share this across teams. So we do one fix, everyone is happy. And we can actually speed up the release process using this, because we are not relying on a third-party service that I cannot rely on actually. So it can be with the wrong data at some point, it can be out, can be anything. There is a question here, how about putting Wiremock in a test container? It can be done in the same way, the same annotations for test container. It's an excellent question. If I go to, just to show you guys, test containers, they do have the module for Wiremock as well. And for Java, you guys can have the same stuff here. I'm using through a container just to distribute, thinking that I should distribute the Docker, Compose, or placing it in a Kubernetes, deploying it in a Kubernetes platform. But if you guys want to use with a test container using code as the same as used for MySQL, for example, that is a way to do, and it's already there in the test containers as a module. All right. The last one. This is the shortest one, but it'll give you the idea of testing asynchronous stuff. And testing asynchronous stuff it would be one of the hardest things, but actually in Java is super easy to do nowadays. So remember that in my payment system, I need to, everything that I run through payment, I need to log in an event, as an event system, as an event, and this audit service will consume this. And for example, I have this not hard-coded, but as one of the things here, just for this presentation. Payment will emit an event. The event will be there, but it will take around 2 seconds for the audit service get this topic, get this event in, get this data and recording it. Of course, in normal situations, in a professional environment, it's not 2 seconds or milliseconds, but anyway, it's not sequential. It's not waiting for the exact data, right? And if I don't wait for that, of course, my tests will fail because I don't have these different synchronous events, how to deal with the synchronous events. So system based on event queues introduce timing uncertainty because you don't know when a topic and a research on anything, the data will be there. Integration tests will fail due to the delay. If the delay is higher than you set, then it will fail anyway. And we are tempted to add some sleeps or pulling hacks. And normally the sleep we love to do is the thread.sleep, which is one of the worst practice because it's actually stopped the full thread per seconds. So it's not or milliseconds, but it's not a good practice as well. How this works here, let me show the code for that. My test. I have a test for events, and in my case, I'm using Kafka here just to show one thing, but I think won't be any data. Let me just start a container with Kafka and everything. Localhost. I have a Kafka running here, Kafka UI, and I have my local here, and I have one broker for that, and I have topics for a payment event, and I have nothing here. I have for now no message, of course, and I have a consumer called payment group to consume whatever it goes to that topic, right? Cool. And that's exactly what you're going to do. So I have a test here that I actually mark it as it should fail, but I need to remove this. So what I have here, I have a test that will fail for sure because the event will take too long to be consumed. So I'm having an event, payment event, with a timestamp, with the event type created and the full payment body. I'm using Kafka here. If you guys are not that used with Kafka, basically we send a message, a topic. The topic is there. Someone needs to consume that. And as soon as consumed, it's marked, hey, someone consumed that, was this event. More or less it's simple like that. It's not that simple, but it's simple like that. Then I say, hey, I'm sending the event. And now I want to test, there is a producer, which sends the event, and there is the consumer who wants to get the event to do something, like my audit, which wants to record this in a database for any kind of double check or any kind of audit. So as soon as I send the event, I went, hey, consumer, I want to get events. I want to see if the event type is created, the payment ID is that, and the timestamp is not null. Simple test that I would do if a consumer is a producer and a consumer for topics for asynchronous things. And if I run this, it will fail. Because the topic will delay a little bit to be there. Because I added this behind the scenes to actually be delayed. And this events, what exactly I added, like just to show you guys the events, I have a producer who will try to send to the payment events, right? And I have a consumer. Oops, let me open the class. In the consumer, you guys can see here there are intentionally at 2 seconds of delay because I would just want to mimic that. It will take some time for the consumer to get there and to pull out the data. That's why the test failed. This is intentionally in my code, but of course, in a real environment, you guys will have thousands or maybe millions of topics being sent. And of course, you cannot be synchronous. You will be asynchronous getting that things. In order to test it, what I should do, and I will show a library to you. And this library to synchronize the test, it's our utility. We want to add a synchronization for that. In terms of synchronization, we need to say to the Java class or the thread, hey, there's something that will be delayed. Wait for that. And of course, this wait for that will define how long it will wait. and if it's not there, which the message, what interaction I will do. So we use our utility to wait for those expected conditions dynamically. We will avoid fixed timeouts to make the test more resilient. I could say, hey, wait 10 seconds. We can run sometimes like hundreds of tests in 10 seconds, right? So fixed timeouts is a bad thing. So we can fix this with the library. And we can actually model and mimic more realistic event-based behaviors for integration tests. So what we will do, we will actually say, hey, wait for some time for me, and then the test will actually wait. And as soon as the information is there, pass. How we can do that? I will show, I won't write the code, but I will show it's already created. So should consume and publish an event. I have the same thing, an event, instant now, created with a payment. I send to the producer, but before I do the test, what I'm saying, hey, I'll it, wait, at most 5 seconds until asserted. This until can be anything. I press dot, I can have until, and I can create my own condition to wait. I have asserted, which will create an assertion. I have atomic. I have a lot of things, different things here, like false, true. The most common ones, if you are creating a test for that, is this until asserted. If it's something really custom that is not true or false, you need to rate your own callable supplier for that. But as it's a test, I wait until I can actually get the events, and I can check that my event, it's created, it has that ID, it's equal to that ID, and timestamp is not null. So what do you see when this test will run? The test won't run instantly and fail. It will run, waiting more or less 2-3 seconds, and then will be successful. Oops. So let's see, in the left side of my test, is starting the Kafka, and now you can see 1, 2, pass. If I run again, you can see exactly 1, 2, and pass. So starting Kafka again, then 1, 2, pass. Why is that 2, 1, 2 pass? Because I remember I set a wait to 2 seconds for the consumer. And as my code, it's actually, hey, wait until 5 seconds, it's running. If I change this to 1 second, of course, it will fail because I have that hard-coded 2 seconds there. And then it failed. If it would be 2 seconds, I think it will be flaky. Sometimes it will be work or not because any other stuff that the thread is doing. Let's just double check. Yeah, it failed because the thread is doing more stuff than that. It should be, if I add 3 at least would suffice. Starting Kafka, 1, 2, pass. Cool. Takeaways and final things. So we can easily test asynchronous flow, but we need to build resilient test assertions. And this library, our utility, will help you a lot for that. By the way, I didn't show this through the POM XML, but it's a normal library. Our utility, no, oops, my POM.xml, utility, it's a normal dependency that you can just use in your project. And with the usage of this library, we can maintain more realistic tests, ensuring that everything will be fine because we are controlling this flow. Cool. So what we have learned on this one, how to support multiple database, how to mock dependencies in a nice way using wire mocks and service virtualization, and how we can test asynchronous requests in terms of anything that can be Kafka, can be any other event system, using our utilities to help us to wait for that resource. Cool. This is thank you again. I hope you guys like it, the both talks, and I'm open for the questions. And I think I remember the questions that I did answer, but take your time to write the questions as well, okay? Let me see the ones I will stop sharing here. And I remember that is there is one here. How to manage this generated data for reuse, like compare, okay, these I answered. And then any example regarding domain specific data like healthcare, etc. Unfortunately, no. Healthcare, I know that is no, but there are some there, like I showed tires, for example. There's aviation, there's some stuff. But if you want those kind of healthcare super specific one that is not there, you can use the last approach that I show it, that you can create your own with the YAML files, then you have basically everything. And I have like 2 questions about WireMock, right? How about putting WireMock in a container? I showed. And how about using WireMock as a microservice so teams can hit it? It's actually exactly what I did. The put in a Docker container, it's basically it's mimicking a microservice. So it's like act as a mock, microservice mock, let's say. We could say that.
Yes, truly, yes. Wonderful stuff, Elias. That's really, really amazing talk, amazing presentation. I think we always encounter this stuff in our daily, coding.
Yeah.
Can fully rely on AI to write the unit test.
It's a little bit out of the presentation, but yes and no. For example, my experiences with that for Java. For unit test, yes, but still the output is not that beautiful. For unit test, it can, but like instead of, for example, if the test could be a data-driven test because only the data will change, the AI won't be able to think that it is the JUnit with the data-driven feature that and use that. It will create the same test with different data. And for other stuff, it's a little bit harder. Even for the agents we have now, for my experience, applying it's still not that good, but it's a good start point. Fully relying, no, but using to speed up some stuff, to learn or to modify some outputs, double checking it, as we should double check all the time, yes. Maybe it will change in the near future, but for now, like my experience is that like we cannot fully rely on it.
Yes, truly, yes. Always AI is should be used as augmentation, not replacement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's really cool stuff. I think we don't have more questions, Mr. Elias. Most of the questions being covered by you. So before we wrap up, I would really, really thank you so much for this great presentation. It's such amazing stuff for me. So many new stuff that I learned today, like amazing and brilliant strategies and ideas for making our test performing good, and also parallelism and this stuff. This really, really good stuff. So thank you so much. And I would also thank the audience for their contribution. And any final words, Mr. Elias?
Again, thank you guys so much for being here, for asking the questions. And one thing, try to also share the knowledge you have in any way possible. If you want to give a talk, if you want to write an article, if you think you help someone, do it because it's the way we keep up our community alive.
Very good, very good, very good. So I'm noting this. Share the stuff with the community always.
Yeah,
As we here share knowledge. Thank you so much again, Elias. I'm really looking forward to also invite you to another talk, maybe in the nearest future. Thank you
sure.
so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. We are ending the stream now.